Good evening. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler. And we're moving in now to the Teleconnections discussion for 6 November 2020. All right, so again, just like last week, I wanted to go ahead and show the various MJO phases and the areas of enhanced convection. MJO ranges between phases 1 to phases 8. So 1 to 8. This graphic shows you where the enhanced convection typically occurs across the equatorial Pacific on into the Indian Ocean for the various MJO phases. So we look for that enhanced convection dependent on the phase of the MJO. So let's go ahead and take a look at the latest GFS Ensemble MJO forecast there on the right-hand side, showing generally that on the 5th of November into today, the 6th of November, we're generally looking at a MJO null phase with minimal impact from the MJO. You'll see on the right-hand side how that number 5 is basically in that inner circle. And that general inner circle, anything within that represents a null phase to the MJO with very minimal impact on the United States weather. Looking ahead now to the GFS operational and the Navy ESPC MJO diagrams for the forecasts. The GFS operational there is on the left. Very similar to the Ensemble, which we just took a look at, indicating the MJO is in a null phase right now in the inner circle of the phase diagram. Minimal impact to the United States weather. And over time, the MJO is forecast to move into just outside the inner circle, be a little more amplified, and according to the Navy ESPC MJO phase forecast, become more amplified as it rotates into phases 3 through 5 by the 22nd of November. And those phases 3 through 5, if it holds true, you look at the temperature composites on the left, phases 3 through 5 are generally mild across the eastern United States. That orange shading there with that graphic on the left, for November, December, and January, phases 3 through 6 are warm. So if the Navy ESPC MJO phase diagram actually verifies, we can continue to see mild temperatures across the eastern U.S. Looking ahead now to the La Nina update, taking a look at that. The latest graphic of sea surface temperature anomalies in degrees Celsius on the right graphic. You notice that blue shading once again across the equatorial eastern Pacific. And then you do have a little reddish color there, orangish red shading off the west coast of the United States. But the real story here of the sea surface temperature anomalies are those blue shadings there along the equatorial eastern Pacific, extending and stretching back to the western or the central equatorial Pacific. Notice the latest reading today. I did a little look at that. The waters there in that the Nino 3.4 region are 1.5 degrees Celsius below normal. And that's generally unchanged from last week. The previous week, a couple weeks ago, we had a drop from 1.3 to 1.5 degrees Celsius below normal. So again, things are looking moderately at the moderate level for La Nina right now. Moving on to the Arctic Oscillation, the actual teleconnection forecast. So let's take a look at things. This is a reminder again about the long wave, the jet stream pattern, negative phase AO on the left and a positive phase AO on the right. And here is the forecast, looking at the European deterministic, the AO forecast running out through 21 November. The AO is currently positive here on the 6th of November, and it's going to remain positive throughout the period according to the European deterministic model. So looking at a positive AO with warm temperatures for the Eastern U.S. through 16 November. Head now to the European EPS 50 perturb member for the AO forecast. This one runs out to the 21st of November, showing again a positive AO throughout the period, that green line, and that again would indicate warmer temperatures for the Eastern U.S. through the 16th of November. Now, the AO does get closer to the zero line, closer to neutral territory by around the 17th of November, according to this EPS 50 perturb member run. Looking ahead now to the European EPS Arctic Oscillation, 50 perturbed members, the 46-day forecast, which runs just before Christmas up through the 21st of December, actually right around the winter solstice, showing a positive phase to the AO, strongly positive actually through the 16th of November, and eventually trending slightly positive to neutral, eventually becoming neutral around the 2nd of December. Moving ahead now to the GFS deterministic AO forecast. You'll notice a strongly positive tendency of the AO on the GFS, and that AO, those white dots there, they stay in the positive territory. So the GFS AO forecast remains positive all the way out through the 23rd of November, and that would indicate, again, warm temperatures across the eastern United States. And then finally, the NCEP Jeffs V12, 30 perturbed members, 16-day forecast out to the 22nd of November. A positive AO is forecast throughout the period, that green line indicating warmer temperatures across the eastern U.S. at least out through the 22nd of November. Moving ahead now to the NAO forecast, North Atlantic Oscillation forecast. And here are the phases once again. We have positive NAO phase on the left and a negative NAO phase on the right. More of a zonal west-to-east jet stream configuration with a positive NAO phase, faster moving systems, lack of high latitude blocking. On the right, the negative NAO phase, we have a deeply amplified trough, a major dip in the jet stream, the polar front jet there in the eastern U.S. with a negative NAO phase, and blocking into the North Atlantic. So just keep these in mind as we go through the forecast. European deterministic NAO forecast, showing generally at this time a strongly positive NAO that is trending towards neutral territory right around the 9th of November, and then back to slightly positive beyond the 9th of November on through to about the 16th of November. Positive phases of NAO again equate to lack of high latitude blocking in the North Atlantic, so we're not expecting any major upper level ridges to build into Greenland based on this forecast. Looking at the European EPS NAO, 50 perturbed members, 15-day forecast out through the 21st of November. Not quite as amplified as the deterministic European. It is positive, however, it's not as sharply positive, and eventually there's a trend in this model, the European EPS 50 perturbed members, for NAO to go to neutral territory around the 17th of November, right on through the 21st of November. But in general, we are still looking at not really much of a negative phase to the NAO. And so, again, that's going to indicate lack of high latitude blocking in the North Atlantic. The European EPS, NAO 50 perturbed members, 46-day forecast. Now this one goes out again to around winter solstice, 21 December, around that time period, showing a much more neutral phase, neutral NAO phase, which is not really going to favor high latitude blocking in the North Atlantic. There'd be more quicker progression of systems from west to east generally with this particular setup. If this were to come true, you see that green line? That's generally indicating the ensemble mean. And then the GFS deterministic NAO forecast today showing a positive phase of the NAO, eventually leveling up to neutral for just a couple days, the 9th and 10th of November, and then back above positive, and then kind of back down to neutral again around mid-November, before again rebounding to positive around the 21st of November. So again, not favoring a high latitude blocking situation in the North Atlantic. And the NCEP Jeffs version 12, 30 perturbed members, 16-day forecast, showing more of a neutral phase to the NAO, generally by the 18th of November. To the Pacific North American forecast, PNA forecast, here's a reminder again about positive versus negative PNA and their implication on the weather across the United States. Positive PNA, below normal temps across the eastern U.S. with a general mean trough position, and with positive PNA you get that mean ridge position out west in the western U.S. and above normal temperatures out west. With a negative PNA, that's the reverse. Increased chances of above normal temperatures across the eastern U.S. with more of a ridge, and the western U.S. get the troughing with a negative PNA and colder than normal temperatures. So here's the European deterministic PNA forecast. was showing a stronger positive phase to the P&A pattern there, the 3rd through the 5th of November, but the trend is going towards negative and fairly sharply negative with P&A. Just a reminder again, the P&A, negative P&A is generally going to result in warm temperatures and a ridge in the Eastern U.S. We look at the European EPS P&A 50 perturbed members out through the 21st of November. This is really showing that negative P&A for quite some time. As you can see, it's staying below the zero line, that green Ensemble mean line, the average, staying negative all the way out through the 21st of November with the P&A pattern, which would indicate a trough in the Western U.S. Here's a look at the European EPS 50 perturbed members now, 46-day forecast out to the 21st of December. Sharply negative P&A pattern there through mid-November, through about the 16th of November. And then you see a trend and a tendency more towards neutral conditions. But neutral conditions really aren't reached with the P&A until around the 11th of December. So again, we wouldn't anticipate very cold conditions in the Eastern U.S. with this kind of setup with P&A being negative. And then GFS deterministic P&A, just again showing a sharply negative situation. And the Jeffs version 12, that is also in negative territory for the P&A forecast all the way out through the 22nd of November. We have a negative P&A, which would yield warmer temperatures in the Eastern U.S. and colder, below normal temperatures in the Western U.S. And on the EPO forecast, here's the reminders about a negative on the left versus positive EPO on the right, showing the differences in the jet stream configuration. With a negative EPO, you get more of a high pressure system over the Gulf of Alaska. And you also get, with a high pressure ridging into Alaska, you get a buckling of the jet stream, the polar front jet stream. You get Arctic high pressure systems that break off as bubbles, bubble highs down into the United States. And much colder air reaches the northern plains to the Midwest. That's where the heart of the coldest air resides with a negative EPO. Now with a positive EPO on the right, you see area of low pressure now in the Gulf of Alaska there in the eastern North Pacific. And that is generally going to allow for more of a west to east jet stream configuration with the coldest air remaining up over the North Pole area and milder temperatures in the lower 48, more of a west to east flow, keeping mild Pacific air over the lower 48. Here's the European deterministic EPO forecast. This goes out through 21 November. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of turbulence here with the EPO forecast according to the European deterministic. You see the white dots there along that line with the white dots, negative. A negative EPO, initially 7 November, actually all the way through about the 12th of November before going back positive. Now, negative EPO typically yields colder than normal temperatures across the northern plains and Midwest. Notice this one here, the European EPS 50 perturbed members, 15-day forecast. And this one goes out to 21 November, more of a positive EPO, again indicating warmer temperatures across the eastern U.S., anywhere from the 11th of November out through the 17th of November. And then beyond the 17th of November, more of a getting closer more to neutral, maybe slightly positive, but not by much. The European EPO 50 perturbed members for 46-day forecast out through 21 December, generally showing a positive EPO, yielding warmer than normal temperatures through the 16th and 17th of November. And then you see a slow step down, but it takes all the way until around the 5th of December for that EPO, that green Ensemble mean, to show more neutral conditions from 6th December on into 21st of December, with no particular favored position of EPO at that point when it's neutral. And then the GFS deterministic model, again, very turbulent, lots of ups and downs, some peaks, some troughs. Back and forth it goes. Generally negative EPO right now at the current time here on the 6th through about the 9th of November. And then a rebound to sharply positive between the 12th and the 16th of November. And then diving negative again after that. So a lot of ups and downs. And then the NCEP Jeffs version 12 EPO, 30 perturbed members. This is a 16-day forecast showing a sharply positive EPO, generally from the 10th of November all the way out through about the 16th of November, and then more of a neutral tendency of the EPO beyond the 16th of November. As for the polar vortex forecast, taking a look at that today, the graphic on the left shows for today, the 6th of November, and generally that polar vortex, the blue shading there on the left, that indicates the coldest temperatures are remaining up over the northern polar areas where they typically reside. Those white solid lines indicate the geopotential height in meters at 30 millibar level, which is very, very high up in the atmosphere. Well above where we live, of course. And then, so that shows, the graphic on the left shows that polar vortex remaining fairly strong over the North Pole. Now, the graphic on the right goes to the end of the model run out through the 22nd of November. And again, really not much change. You can see this. If anything, it becomes more concentric, the polar vortex, and actually becomes a little bit stronger with the coldest air, again, remaining over the North Polar areas. So what does this mean? This means a strong polar vortex through the 22nd of November, according to the latest model run, with milder temperatures across the lower 48. No major intrusions of Arctic air, no major dips in the jet stream if this were the case. Coldest air will remain over the polar areas. All right, so final thoughts on tonight's video. Taking a look at these teleconnections. The MJO is currently in the null phase with no significant impact on the United States weather. The forecast is for slightly amplified at phases 2, 3, and 4. Milder phases for the Eastern U.S. by 15 November. So again, no impact overall, eventually transitioning to milder temperatures, especially if the Navy ESPC Ensemble MJO forecast is on track. La Nina conditions continue across the equatorial Eastern Pacific. As for this week's video, the temperatures were 1.5 degrees Celsius below normal in that Nino 3.4 region. And that is, La Nina pattern generally favors a warmer and drier southern U.S. on into the mid-Atlantic, with the coldest air remaining over the Pacific Northwest of the northern plains. And the weather conditions also remaining over those areas, the Northwest Pacific and the northern plains. So with La Nina, as we're seeing, we're expecting that would indicate more mild temperatures. Additionally, models are indicating a positive trend in the Arctic Oscillation, the AO, through 17 November. And as long as that AO remains positive, those mild temperatures will continue across the eastern U.S. Additionally, models are indicating a positive trend in the North Atlantic Oscillation, NAO, through the middle of November, with a change to neutral conditions the third week of November. So what does this mean? Positive trends to the NAO, you get lack of high latitude blocking in the North Atlantic, and that's going to allow for more progressive weather patterns with faster moving systems from west to east. No major storm development outside of remnant tropical systems that could become hybrid storms perhaps over the outlook period. But we're looking for mild temperatures. We're not looking for any major storms, nor'easters, any major amplification of the polar front jet stream with a positive NAO. Additionally, models are indicating a negative trend in the Pacific North American pattern, the PNA, through late November. That's going to continue to favor the coldest temperatures in the western U.S., with the trough out that location, and mildest temperatures in the eastern U.S. with a ridge. So mild temperatures, if the PNA is the dominant teleconnection, it's going to be mild for quite some time through late November. Models are indicating a positive trend in the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, the EPO, through 17 November. That positive trend would indicate mild air from west to east coast. If that were the case, that verifies. Especially in the eastern U.S., we would see mild temperatures. And then models are indicating a strong polar vortex to continue, maintaining its position over the North Pole. We don't see any elongation, any splitting, or any displacement of the polar vortex off the polar area. Therefore, we don't expect any sharp amplitude to polar front jet streams, or basically no major Arctic air intrusions in the eastern U.S. are likely. Period. It's going to stay up over the northern polar areas. So overall assessment, based on all the teleconnections for this week, really they're indicating mild temperatures to continue for the eastern U.S. Very little change to the current weather pattern. We've been sitting with high pressure situated just off the mid-Atlantic coast over the western Atlantic. very weak gradient, not much in the way of wind. And we've been having some pretty mild temperatures. Highs each day have been in the lower 70s across southeast Virginia, for example. And the nighttime lows are getting down to around 60. But I tell you what, it could be much cooler this time of year. We're heading now tomorrow into the 7th of November, and there's really no indication, according to these teleconnections, of any significant changes in the upcoming weather pattern. Mild AO, positive, that's mild. NAO, positive, that's no blocking in the North Atlantic, like I mentioned, and that's fairly quick movement of systems from west to east. That doesn't favor any kind of sharp amplitude in the jet stream. Additionally, the PNA, that's a negative phase. That's mild temperatures across the Eastern U.S. if that verifies. So again, mild with the PNA. EPO, positive. Positive EPO yields milder temperatures across the Eastern U.S. The polar vortex remaining as far north as it is here in the latest forecast run today. It just bodes mild all the way across. So we will see if things change. And I'll continue to do these teleconnection discussions on a weekly basis to give you the latest. And we need to really pay attention to these teleconnections, whether it's MJO, the La Nina. I was taking a look at some data yesterday on La Nina, and looking at 2010, 2011, that winter. For example, the Mid-Atlantic had a really good snowstorm. I mean, December 26, 2010, 14.2 inches of snow were measured at Norfolk, Virginia, for example. And that was in a moderate La Nina year with a very strongly negative AO, by the way, and NAO. So those two teleconnections, AO and NAO, were way more dominant at that point in time in December, late December of 2010. That winter in Hampton Roads, Virginia, the area, the 8th snowiest at 21.8 inches of snow for the winter of 2010, 2011. And that was a moderate La Nina. Like we talk about how La Nina, the typical conditions, but in that case, that didn't pan out. So we'll continue to watch the La Nina conditions. It looks like the water temperature anomalies have leveled off for the last week at 1.5 degrees Celsius below normal in that Nino 3.4 region. It all comes down to the MJO is not having an impact. The AO is looking mild with positive, remaining positive. NAO. Perhaps things will look different as we progress through this next week. The PNA pattern, as long as it remains negative, the trough will remain in the western U.S. and that ridge will remain in the east. And that means milder, warmer than normal temperatures in the eastern U.S. and the colder than normal temperatures remaining out west with a negative PNA. So again, we'll keep an eye on all this, the polar vortex. Do appreciate your subscription to this channel, the Spot On Weather channel. We're spot on weather. If we're not spot on, we're not doing it right. And I will be back again, hopefully with another video. Hopefully look back at classic snowstorm cases for the Mid-Atlantic soon. Look to try to create some time and put those together. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Everybody have a great weekend. Most importantly, everybody stay healthy. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening. Spot on weather. Good night.